Have you ever helped a stranger without expecting anything in return, only to find out they weren't who you thought they were? Sarah, an ordinary woman with a kind heart, did something simple. She bought a homeless man a meal, but what she didn't know was that this small act of kindness would change her life forever. The next day, that same man walked into the restaurant, wearing a suit, looking completely different, and he had a secret that would turn everything upside down. Sarah was just an ordinary woman. She worked a regular office job, lived a simple life, and believed in kindness, no matter how small. She wasn't rich, she wasn't famous, but she had something many people lacked, a genuine heart. Every evening after work, she stopped by a small diner near her office. It wasn't fancy, but it had good food and a warm atmosphere. She loved watching the world pass by as she enjoyed her meal in peace. But that night, something was different. Just outside the window, a man stood in the cold. His clothes were worn out. His shoes barely held together, and his face carried the weight of a hard life. He wasn't begging. He just stood there, staring at the plates of food inside. Sarah felt a pang of sympathy. People around her glanced at the man with disgust, whispering to each other. Some even moved their belongings closer as if afraid he might come inside. But Sarah? She didn't see a threat. She saw a human being, hungry, tired, and perhaps in need of nothing more than a little kindness. And in that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. Sarah didn't hesitate. She stood up, walked to the entrance, and opened the door. The cold air rushed in as she looked at the man and smiled. "Are you hungry?" she asked gently. The man hesitated. His eyes, filled with both gratitude and shame, darted toward the diners who were now staring at them. He looked as if he wanted to refuse, but his empty stomach betrayed him. Sarah didn't wait for an answer. "Come on, let's get you something to eat." She led him inside, ignoring the disapproving glances from the other customers. The man walked cautiously, as if he didn't belong, as if he expected someone to throw him out at any moment. When they reached the counter, Sarah turned to him. "Order whatever you want." His hands trembled as he picked up the menu. Just a small meal, please," he whispered. Sarah smiled. "Get whatever makes you full." The cashier looked skeptical but took the order. A steaming plate of food soon arrived, and as the man took his first bite, Sarah noticed something unusual. He ate slowly, with careful manners, as if he wasn't just starving but trying to preserve his dignity. Halfway through the meal, he paused, looking at Sarah with eyes filled with something deeper than gratitude. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I know," she replied, "but I wanted to." For the first time that night, he smiled. A small, tired smile, but a real one. As he finished the last bite, he looked at her with an intensity that caught her off guard. "Thank you," he said softly. "I won't forget this." Then, without another word, he stood up, nodded politely, and walked out into the night. Sarah watched him disappear into the streets, thinking it was just a simple act of kindness, nothing more. But she had no idea. This was only the beginning. Next evening, Sarah returned to the diner as usual, expecting just another quiet meal after work. But as she stepped inside, something immediately felt different. People were whispering, stealing glances toward the entrance. There was an unusual energy in the air, curiosity, maybe even disbelief. And then she saw him. Standing near the counter, looking completely unrecognizable, was the same man from the night before. But instead of tattered clothes and worn-out shoes, he now wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit. His beard was neatly trimmed, his hair combed back, and his posture exuded quiet confidence. Sarah froze. This couldn't be the same person. Could it? Then he turned, and their eyes met. A slow, knowing smile spread across his face as he took a step toward her. "Hello again, Sarah," he said, his voice calm and steady. Sarah's mind raced. How did he know her name? Had she told him? No, she was sure she hadn't. And more importantly, who was this man? The other diners, the same ones who had looked at him with disdain the night before, were now eyeing him with curiosity and admiration. A few even seemed embarrassed, as if realizing their mistake. "You look different," Sarah finally managed to say. The man chuckled. "I suppose I do." He gestured to a table. "Mind if we sit? There's something I need to tell you." Sarah hesitated, for just a second before nodding. The air around them was thick with anticipation. As she took a seat across from him, she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever he was about to say would change everything. Sarah sat across from him, her heart pounding. The man, now polished and confident, no longer looked like the homeless stranger she had helped the night before. Who was he? He took a deep breath and leaned slightly forward. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. My name is James Carter." Sarah frowned. The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. Seeing her confusion, James continued. "A few weeks ago, I lost everything. My business, my home. Even my friends disappeared the moment my bank account hit zero. I had no one. No one except strangers who either ignored me or looked at me with pity." He paused, his fingers tapping lightly against the table. "But then last night, you didn't just see me as a homeless man. You treated me like a person, with dignity. You have no idea how much that meant." Sarah swallowed, still trying to process what she was hearing. James smiled. "What you didn't know is that before I lost everything, I was the CEO of Carter Industries." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Carter Industries, a major investment firm. Suddenly, she did remember his name. Just a few months ago, his company had been in the news after a shocking financial scandal. Some claimed he had disappeared. Others said he had fled the country. "I was betrayed by people I trusted," James continued. "My business partner framed me, and I had no way to prove my innocence. My accounts were frozen, my assets seized, and within days I was on the streets." Sarah stared at him, speechless. "But thanks to you, something changed," he said, his eyes filled with emotion. "Your kindness reminded me that not everyone in this world is selfish. It gave me the strength to fight back." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "And today I got my life back." Sarah hesitated before taking the paper. As she unfolded it, her eyes widened. It was a legal document, a court ruling. "They found the real culprit," James said, his voice firm. "I've been cleared of all charges. My assets are being restored, and I wanted you to be the first person to know, because without you, I might not have made it." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. She had only done what she thought was right, but to him it had meant everything. And then James smiled. "But that's not all. I have one more surprise for you." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" James leaned back, his eyes twinkling. "Let's just say your kindness is about to come full circle." Sarah had no idea what he meant, but she was about to find out. Sarah looked at James, her mind still reeling from everything he had just revealed. But before she could process it all, he reached into his suit pocket and placed an envelope on the table. "This is for you," he said, sliding it toward her. Sarah hesitated. "What is this?" James smiled. "Open it and see." With slightly shaky hands, she picked up the envelope and carefully opened it. Inside was a neatly printed letter and a check. Her eyes widened as she saw the amount, enough to cover years of rent, maybe even buy a home. She gasped. "James, I can't accept this," but he shook his head. Yes, you can, and you should, because this isn't charity. It's gratitude. Sarah was speechless. People ignored me, judged me, and turned their backs on me, James continued. But you didn't. You showed me kindness when I had nothing. Now, I have a chance to give something back. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. I never expected anything in return. I just wanted to help. James nodded. And that's exactly why you deserve it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the moment hung between them, filled with gratitude, disbelief, and something unspoken, proof that even the smallest act of kindness could change a life. Then, James chuckled. And if you're wondering, yes, I did notice you eyeing that little bookstore across the street every night. Consider this a small investment in your dream. Sarah covered her mouth in shock. How did you... I pay attention to the people who matter, he said with a wink. And in that moment, Sarah realized, sometimes kindness doesn't just change one life, it comes full circle in ways we never expect. Sarah sat there staring at the check, her heart full of emotions she couldn't quite put into words. Just 24 hours ago, she had been an ordinary woman helping a stranger in need. And now, that small act of kindness had come back to her in the most incredible way. James smiled. You didn't just give me a meal, Sarah. You gave me dignity, a reason to believe that there's still good in this world. And I'll never forget that. Sarah blinked back tears and smiled. I didn't do anything special, James. I just treated you the way everyone should be treated. He nodded. And if more people thought like you, the world would be a much better place. As they stood to leave, Sarah glanced at the small bookstore across the street, the one she had always dreamed of owning. Maybe, just maybe, dreams weren't as out of reach as they seemed. As James walked out of the diner, people who had once ignored him now looked at him with awe. But Sarah, she only saw the same man from last night, the one who just needed someone to care. And in that moment, she understood. Kindness isn't about what you get in return. It's about what you give without expecting anything. But sometimes, life surprises you in the most beautiful ways. What do you think? Have you ever experienced a moment where kindness came full circle? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories.